Hey, stuffers. I see those long white lines and I instantly think, is that the government or just a sad cloud? Alex here, and welcome back to Stuff with Alex. For decades, the idea that high-flying jets are secretly spraying us with chemical or biological agents, a phenomenon known only as chemtrails, has been the gold standard for late-night radio whispers and deep internet paranoia. It's a classic, the kind of conspiracy theory that makes a person look up, squint at the sky, and then immediately think, are they trying to control my mind, or am I just grumpy because I ran out of coffee? Most educated people, scientists, and government agencies have historically dismissed this belief as simply erroneous, a case of mistaking normal, water-based condensation trails, contrails, for a nefarious plot. It's vintage 90s paranoia, right up there, waiting for Y2K to kill your modem. But here is where things get aggressive in 2025, and where the line between fringe theory and codified law dissolves faster than a normal contrail on a warm day. The most shocking update to this whole cloudy mess is that the state of Florida, bless its sunny heart, just functionally validated the core premise of the chemtrail theory, not by confirming the chemicals, but by criminalizing the act. Florida passed Senate Bill 56, SB 56, which is set to become effective July 1, 2025. This legislation makes the unauthorized injection, release, or dispersion of substances into the atmosphere for the purpose of affecting the temperature, climate, weather, or intensity of sunlight a third-degree felony. We are talking about 5 years of prison time and $100,000 in fines for messing with the clouds. How did a theory popularized by radio host Art Bell in the late 1990s get codified into state law right next to Grand Theft Auto? This legal action creates a profound paradox. By making unauthorized geoengineering illegal, the government implicitly acknowledges that such technology exists and that its deployment must be strictly regulated or prohibited. For believers, this law isn't a ban on something theoretical. It's confirmation that the thing they feared, someone deliberately modifying the environment from high altitudes, is real enough to require criminal penalties. We are going to trace the trail, literally and figuratively, from fringe whisper to legislative nightmare, separating the legitimate science of atmospheric modification from the persistent, lingering fear that we are all living under a secretly controlled sky. To understand the core conflict, one must first define the players in this high-altitude drama. On one side, there is the contrail, short for condensation trail, which is a completely normal, water-based cloud formed when high-flying aircraft jet exhaust meets frigid, humid air. Think of it as your car's breath on a freezing morning, but 30,000 feet higher. These trails are expected and are essentially miniature ice crystal clouds. On the other side sits the chemtrail, which is not a scientific term, but rather an erroneous belief. Proponents of the conspiracy claim that these long-lasting, persistent white lines are actually biological or chemical agents being sprayed for purposes undisclosed to the public. The distinguishing feature, according to believers, is that normal contrails dissipate quickly, while these chemtrails linger, spread, and turn the sky into a milky haze. The chemtrail conspiracy theory didn't just materialize out of thin air. It required a perfect storm of government documentation and emerging digital communication to gain traction. The theories began circulating after the United States Air Force, or USAF, published a 1996 report discussing weather modification. This report, regardless of its context, provided a starting point, a seemingly official document that allowed the initial question, "Is the government doing this?" to be asked with a shred of apparent legitimacy. By the late 1990s, accusations were spreading across nascent internet forums, particularly through figures like Richard Finke and William Thomas, claiming that the USAF was spraying the U.S. population with mysterious substances from aircraft that were generating unusual contrail patterns. The crucial element for its mass survival, however, was its adoption by late-night radio host Art Bell, who began popularizing the theories on his show starting in 1999. This timing, the late 90s, is key to understanding the theory's longevity. It coincided with the point where a powerful government document, the USAF report, collided with the early information ecology of the Internet, which lacked the swift scientific rebuttal systems or fact-checking apparatuses we rely on today. This environment allowed the initial question to be hyper-sensationalized by the unmediated digital culture, ensuring the theory anchored itself deeply into public consciousness before the scientific community could effectively dismiss it. Once a conspiracy is established, the motives attached to it become a buffet of bad intentions. Those who subscribe to the theory speculate that the chemical release could be serving multiple nefarious goals. These include solar radiation management, where chemicals are sprayed to reflect sunlight and cool the planet, broad weather modification for economic or military advantage, human population control, psychological manipulation, or outright testing of biological or chemical agents on an unsuspecting population. Furthermore, believers frequently link the trails to rising rates of respiratory illnesses and other widespread health problems. It's the ultimate all-encompassing villain plot, justifying nearly any ailment or strange atmospheric pattern observed. The fundamental proof for the chemtrail theory rests entirely on one visual concept: persistence. If a trail dissipates quickly, it's a normal contrail. If it lingers for hours and spreads across the sky, it must be something else, something sinister. Science, however, explains this phenomenon with physics that are far more mundane than a covert government operation. The persistence of a contrail is not governed by the contents of the plane's fuel tank beyond the resulting water vapor, but solely by the high-altitude atmospheric conditions, specifically the temperature and humidity at the level where the aircraft is flying. If the atmosphere is sufficiently cold and saturated with moisture, the water crystals formed by the jet exhaust will not immediately sublimate, turn back into gas. Instead, they persist for hours and may spread out, eventually becoming several kilometers or miles wide. These spreading, persistent trails are, quite literally, clouds. They are formally described as homomutatus clouds and often resemble natural cirrus, cirrocumulus, or cirrostratus clouds, sometimes earning the specific classification of cirrus aviaticus. The science is not mysterious. It is the atmospheric equivalent of the difference between your breath dissolving instantly on a humid summer day versus hanging in the air like a cloud on a freezing winter morning. The scientific community has consistently and overwhelmingly dismissed the chemtrail claim. There is zero evidence suggesting that the purported chemtrails differ in any way from the normal water-based contrails that are routinely produced by high-flying aircraft under the right atmospheric conditions. To quell the recurring fear, scientists have specifically investigated the existence of a secret large-scale atmospheric program. A 2016 survey asked 77 atmospheric scientists whether they had encountered any evidence of such a program. The results were conclusive. 76 out of the 77 experts surveyed, a staggering 98.7%, confirmed they had found no evidence of a SLAP. The data cited by conspiracy proponents as evidence could be entirely explained by established atmospheric science, typical contrail formation, or, critically, poor data sampling instructions provided on SLAP-focused websites. To put this stark reality into perspective, the difference between the scientifically established fact of condensation and the conspiratorial belief in chemical warfare is clear: the difference between contrails and chemtrails. Skeptics often point to high readings of certain elements, like aluminum or barium, in soil or water samples. However, Scientists at organizations like NOAA use incredibly advanced technology designed to find exactly the kind of exotic metal particles that chemtrail theorists claim are being sprayed. Using high-altitude research aircraft, such as NASA's WB-57, instruments are deployed to collect, vaporize, and chemically fingerprint individual aerosol particles using mass spectrometry. This process determines the exact atomic mass and relative abundance of each element, creating a precise chemical signature. While these advanced methods can detect exotic metal particles, NOAA research links these particles in the upper atmosphere to sources like rockets and satellites, not secret spraying campaigns. The sophisticated instruments designed to detect every minute detail of the atmosphere consistently fail to produce evidence supporting the conspiracy. This scientific clarity leads to an important analytical conclusion. The visual anxiety experienced by the public when they see these long-spreading clouds is rational, but their ultimate conclusion is misdirected. These persistent contrails, while not chemtrails, are a legitimate, measurable environmental concern. Persistent spreading contrails contribute to climate change by increasing the cloudiness of the atmosphere. The true problem that the public is noticing is not a clandestine plot, but the collective, visible impact of conventional global air travel, a diffuse, challenging environmental reality that is far harder to pin on a single villain than a secret government agency. Stuffers, smash that like button if you're already confused by the sheer number of scientists who say this is just water. Also, try saying Cirrus Aviaticus 5 times fast. If the chemtrail theory is fiction, then what is the scientific reality that fuels the persistent fear? The answer is geoengineering, specifically solar radiation management, or SRM. This is the factual basis that the conspiracy theory latched onto and amplified, making the entire conversation dangerously complex. SRM is a legitimate emerging field of proposed approaches designed to cool the planet by modifying the Earth's radiative balance. It is seen by some researchers as a temporary measure that might ameliorate some of the worst impacts of climate change during the century, though reducing atmospheric greenhouse gas concentrations is acknowledged as the only viable long-term strategy. The methods are strikingly similar to the activities described in the conspiracy theories, which is precisely why the paranoia endures. Stratospheric Aerosol Injection. This is the primary method that mirrors the chemtrail fear. It involves injecting reflective particles into the stratosphere to mimic the cooling effect of volcanic eruptions. Marine cloud brightening. Using sea salt aerosols to increase the reflectivity of low-lying marine clouds. Cirrus cloud thinning. Attempts to prevent warming by reducing the persistence of high-altitude cirrus clouds. Current research programs, such as those funded by the Simons Foundation, prioritize key areas like discovering environmentally benign materials for SAI and CCT, and performing laboratory physicochemical characterization of these materials. The explicit goal is to fill fundamental scientific knowledge gaps necessary for policymakers to make informed decisions. The ethical dilemma surrounding SRM is immense. Researchers acknowledge that it carries the potential for significant environmental and societal risks. These risks include stratospheric warming, depletion of the ozone layer, and critical changes in global rainfall patterns, which would profoundly affect water resources and agriculture worldwide. Because the risks are so high and the knowledge base is so sparse, a critical research mandate is in place. Major research programs involving SRM are currently confined to the lab. Projects involve passive observation of the existing atmosphere, complex computer modeling, and small-scale experiments confined strictly to laboratory settings. Crucially, the funded projects explicitly state that they involve none of the feared activities. There are no in-atmosphere alterations or testing taking place. This rigorous adherence to cautious, lab-only research presents an ironic strategic absence of evidence that complicates the public discourse. Ethical scientists correctly refuse to conduct open, large-scale field tests due to the high, unpredictable risks involved. However, the public never sees open, transparent, small-scale trials or field experiments. This absence of visible, authorized, and limited testing feeds the conspiratorial narrative, leading believers to conclude that if the technology is real and mature, which it is in theory, then the real deployment must be secret and clandestine, a cover-up perpetrated by the scientific community itself. If they could fix the climate with a magic spray but risk destroying the ozone layer, would you let them? Drop your ethical dilemma below. The chemtrail theory, fueled by the terrifying reality of geoengineering research, successfully transitioned from the fringe of talk radio to the center of American populist politics between 2024 and 2025. This transition is marked by legislative efforts to ban atmospheric alteration and high-profile political endorsements. The movement gained immense gravity when Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who assumed the role of U.S. Secretary of Health and Human Services in 2025, began supporting the conspiracy theory in 2024. His vocal endorsement moved the concept from a niche environmental fear to a subject discussed at the highest levels of the executive branch, with claims that the Department of Defense was already adding chemicals to jet fuel. This official acceptance, regardless of its basis in science, gave the theory a new level of mainstream legitimacy. The most impactful legislative development is Florida's CSCS SB 56, Geoengineering and Weather Modification Activities, which became Chapter number 2025-157. This law, championed by Senator Ileana Garcia, explicitly prohibits the release of a chemical, compound, substance, or apparatus into the atmosphere within Florida's borders for the express purpose of affecting temperature, weather, climate, or sunlight intensity. Violations are punishable as a third-degree felony, including up to 5 years imprisonment. Senator Garcia stated the bill was designed to address modern environmental concerns and to eliminate any ambiguity regarding the legality of weather modification. Governor Ron DeSantis supported the bill, claiming Floridians are proud of our sunshine. This means that in the Sunshine State, attempting to dim the sun is now categorized as a serious crime. The political reaction is not confined to the state level. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, Rep. AGA, introduced the Clear Skies Act, a federal bill seeking to prohibit a wide range of activities, including geoengineering, cloud seeding, and solar radiation management. She announced that the House would hold a September 2025 hearing titled Playing God with the Weather, a Disastrous Forecast, intending to examine the federal role and potential unintended consequences of weather and climate control technology. While Florida established a broad felony ban, the legislative response across the country has been fragmented and often contradictory. States like Arizona and Montana advanced similar bills intended to ban solar radiation management. However, these proposals were often drafted with a narrower scope, sometimes explicitly allowing traditional weather modification techniques like cloud seeding. This patchwork of state laws, ranging from broad felony bans to more nuanced restrictions, reveals an important political truth. This is largely a populist response. State politicians are seizing the opportunity to appease a base by formalizing a ban on a highly feared, yet scientifically unproven, clandestine activity. The legislative trend translates public anxiety and misinformation directly into criminal statutes, which poses a profound challenge to future environmental policy and the objective pursuit of scientific understanding. Summarizes the recent geoengineering legislative activities. Geoengineering legislation in the United States, 2024 to 2025. The legislative zeal to ban geoengineering is based on constituent fear, but the resulting laws carry severe unintended consequences for future climate management and policy. The current legal landscape creates two major problems, hindering legitimate science and formally legitimizing paranoid claims. By criminalizing the release of substances intended to affect the climate, politicians risk eliminating the legal and scientific infrastructure required to conduct research into potential climate mitigation strategies. If the planet reaches a catastrophic tipping point this century, requiring emergency deployment of solar radiation management to save lives or critical ecosystems, the legal groundwork established today, which criminalizes even small-scale testing, will prevent rapid, informed action. Furthermore, these laws fail to distinguish between the legitimate, necessary foundational scientific steps, like characterizing new, environmentally benign materials for SAI in a lab, and the fringe fears of widespread covert chemical warfare. The premature banning of a broad category of science based on political populism is a dangerous precedent, forcing scientific progress to confront a hostile legal framework. Florida's SB 56 established a system to track, log, and investigate citizen concerns about geoengineering. While ostensibly aimed at separating fact from fiction, the existence of a formal government system dedicated to investigating chemtrail-related claims grants the conspiracy theory a level of governmental validation it never previously achieved. Before the law, the concern was dismissed by science. Now, the concern is officially logged by the state, implicitly confirming that the premise of the public's fear warrants formal oversight. This turns policy intended to calm citizens into a formal platform for conspiratorial narratives. Even if SRM technology were mature and implemented ethically, the environmental risks remain profound. If deployment causes stratospheric warming or changes in rainfall that hurt regional agriculture, a massive question of justice arises. Justice, in its objective moral sense, requires rendering to each person what is due, ensuring harmony and impartiality. If a global geoengineering effort benefits one region while simultaneously causing famine in another by shifting weather patterns, who is responsible for providing justice to the affected? The ethical and theological question is whether humanity possesses the wisdom or humility required to play God with the massive, interconnected system of the planet, or if the duty to intervene must always be tempered by the fear of consequences beyond our comprehension. We've looked at the history, the science, and the law. Now let's talk about the biggest, cloudiest question of all. Is it wisdom or hubris to try and fix God's creation? We started with a decades-old conspiracy theory, the idea that secret agents are spraying us from high-flying jets, and found that the greatest drama isn't chemical but legal. The lingering white lines in the sky are not poison but complex, persistent, water-based clouds, homo mutatis, which are an environmental problem in their own right, increasing cloudiness and contributing to climate change. The fear is genuine, but the science of chemical spraying is imaginary. The only real spraying happening is contained in labs and computer models for now.
The attempt by politicians to criminalize atmospheric alteration while appealing to a populist base forces a confrontation between human anxiety and profound global responsibility. The great challenge is not fighting secret enemies, but navigating the real, visible complexity of the world around us. The incredible depth and intricacy of the atmosphere, where tiny water crystals from jet exhaust can persist for hours, transforming into vast clouds visible across entire states, is a demonstration of an intricately designed system. Whether one calls it nature, physics, or creation, the complexity is breathtaking. When we look up, we are reminded that humans are just a small part of this vast, interconnected system. The human desire to control this system, whether through fearful legislation or unresearched technology, often stems from a lack of wisdom. True wisdom is often found not in attempting to manipulate what we see, but in seeking truth and meaning in what has been clearly established and what is visibly complex. The order and design of the universe itself is a silent testimony, always available to those who choose to look honestly at what is truly made. It is a powerful reminder that the eternal power and complex nature of the world are right there, above the clouds, constantly on display for all who seek understanding. Romans chapter 1, verse 20. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. Okay, thanks for watching. Peace out. Goodbye, guys.